Back in the early days of patch 1.3, I mainly ran around to DZ using two different builds. One of those was my Tactician build and the other one was a little passion project of mine. My first attempt at creating a true healer build for PvP that would allow my teammates to run something else other than their first aid. The experimental healer build is what I called it, and instead of using normal gear mods, I used performance mods and skill attribute rolls on my gear to increase the support station range up to a total of 15 meters. Now believe it or not, but back then this was actually pretty unheard of. I'm sure I'm not the first guy in the whole game to have tried this out, but before I posted this video I had never seen anyone else do this. The build itself, I guess it was okay. It could have been stronger if I wouldn't have used the sentry backpack, but ultimately the game just didn't allow for it. The healing from the station was kept at 5000 health per second, so you couldn't really go beyond that. The NPCs, they hit so hard that everybody that was not in the station would almost be dead instantly if they didn't have their own heals, and the first aid could also be tagged multiple times in a row if you would enter and exit the first aid radius over and over and over again. So really there wasn't a need for a station, because why would you need a station that heals you for 5000 health per second if you have a first aid that heals you for 50,000 HP every 2 seconds? So yeah, ultimately, as cool as the build was, at least in my opinion, I had to put it away because it just wasn't effective. But fast forward to patch 1.4 and healer builds suddenly became a lot better. Skill power scaling was better and skills had their hard caps removed, allowing for skills such as the station to really go beyond what they were previously able to. But the developers also changed how the performance mods would work in the game. For example, you were not able to put performance mods in the regular gear mod slots anymore, which was fine, you know, but it meant that the maximum support station range, it was very far from that glorious 15 meters range. And thus, the support station build that I had, it wasn't really a thing anymore, because the range wouldn't be as big anymore. Skipping forward to patch 1.6, skill power gets another buff, skills get adjusted again, the soft cap is increased from 250,000 to 450,000, and Reclaimer also gets a rework, because instead of focusing around the consumables, it now completely revolves around the support station, giving back more range, more duration, and allowing for all the mods to be active at the same time through the 4-piece. But the developers also introduced some changes to the support station itself, which came with some pretty nasty bugs that kinda butchered the support station in itself, because it would heal at a very inconsistent rate, not to mention that the game also had a lot of revive bugs around the support station at this time. So the 4-piece, with the life support mods that would automatically revive players, it would get in the way more than that it would help, because it would block your recovery link, for example. But now, we have arrived at patch 1.8. The classified Reclaimer has been introduced, giving even more range to the station and a very, very fat healing rate and health buff to go with it. Not to mention that if you build it right, you also have no cooldown on the station when it is destroyed, meaning that you can just place it wherever you want without the fear of enemies shooting it down. Of course, they can still use EMPs to disable it, but then they're forced to run with EMP stickies all the time just to deal with your station. And I think that's a very powerful thing. At the same time, with patch 1.8, the healing rate issues and bugs have also been fixed, as well as most of the revive issues with the station. Not all of them, you know, we still have some of those, but they don't really get in the way of regular PvP most of the time. And it finally seems that the thing that started off as a crazy experiment for me, all the way back in patch 1.3, can now finally be a reality. And needless to say, yeah, I'm pretty happy. Let's begin with the video. The 2-piece for the Reclaimer gives the player 30% support station range, the 3-piece gives you 50% support station duration, and then as I mentioned before, the 4-piece activates all of the support station mods. The 5-piece then gives you 15% more range and 25% more duration, and the 6-piece actually does a few different things which are all very powerful. First up, it straight up doubles the healing speed of the station, then it also increases the health by 50%, and it comes with a chance to have no cooldown on the station when it is destroyed by an enemy. Now how big this chance is, that actually depends on your electronics amount. It starts off at 40% when you have no electronics whatsoever, but then it is increased by 20% for every 3000 electronics that you have. So at 9000 electronics, the chance will be 100%, and thus every time that the station gets destroyed, you get it back instantly. That's why on this build we have 9000 electronics. The 6-piece also used to have increased revive speed, which then gave the box a 3-second revive instead of a 5-second one. But I think Red Storm and Massive thought this was too cheesy in PvP and it got removed, which is, you know, it's pretty fair in my opinion. Now, because you can only increase the chance for the instant cooldown up to 100% when you have 9000 electronics, I think it is pretty important that every Reclaimer build out there has at least that amount, and in some cases, especially for PvE, I'd say that you can even go beyond that and go straight for 10,000 electronics if you want to, because the box, it scales really well with skill power due to the 100% increased healing multiplier. Basically, every 10,000 skill power that you add translates into 1,000 HP per second extra on the box. So Reclaimer is one of those builds where if you want to, if you feel like you can do it, you should really push as much into electronics and skill power as possible. For PvP though, we unfortunately can't really go all the way and spec 10,000 of our main sets into electronics, because if we do that, we're gonna die really fast. So with this build, I just went for the minimal requirement of 9,000 electronics, but apart from that, I mostly spec'd into stamina and plus health rolls on the gear so that I don't just die in 3 bullets when I'm getting shot at, because, you know, a dead healer is also not too good for the team. And with my skill power sitting just below 300,000, that is going to give me a box that heals me for about 23 to 24,000 HP a second. And that's pretty strong. If we look at the stats on the gear, you'll notice that most of it is rolled according to the best in slot guide, with a few exceptions here and there. On the chest piece, we have health, skill haste, and ammo capacity, which is 1-to-1 to the best in slot. Then we have skill power and burn resistance on the mask, and we have health, disrupt, shock, and burn resistance on the knee pads. The backpack then has skill power and disrupt resistance, and I guess this is something that we have to talk about, because usually, of course, we would go for the plus health roll here and not skill power. And I do actually have an identical Reclaimer backpack that has the exact same stats, but instead of skill power, I have plus health, so, you know, I could make this 1-to-1 according to the best in slot guide. But I went for skill power here because whenever I'm playing a healer in my squad, I am never the one dying first pretty much, due to my kind of passive but also very pussy playstyle. Basically, all that I do when I'm playing a healer is throw heals, throw stations, pop medkits, and then move around my teammates to make the enemies waste their bullets on me. I only really shoot my weapon if I know that no one else will be shooting back at me, and because of this, I'm not really the one dying. You know, we have some exceptions, but usually it's not me. And because of this, I'm trying to figure out how far I can push my character into skill power before I get too squishy and before I'm the one that gets dropped down first. Basically, I'm trying to push out stronger and stronger heals for the teammates to see how far I can push it. But of course, usually, if you were to follow the best in slot guide, you should go for health here. This is just a personal adjustment that I made for some personal reasons. Nothing that you should copy per se. Just something that I wanted to touch up on real quick. The gloves that I have are pretty standard with skill haste, assault rifle damage, and critical hit chance. And then the holster is also pretty standard with just skill haste. The mods are all electronics as well, with skill haste on them as well. And the performance mods, they are support station range mods. Now I know that the question about support station healing speed mods is going to come up in the comment section, so I'll just be ahead of that and tell you that I do not think it is worth to run healing speed mods for the support station. The healing speed mods for the station, they roll 5% healing speed max on all of them. So if you have 4 of those healing speed mods, that amounts to 20% more healing. Sounds pretty strong, but this 20% is going to be additive to the 100% extra healing from the Reclaimer 6-piece. So in reality, it only adds about 10% more healing, and I think that that's not really worth it over the 30% additional range from the range mods. Not even now that the healing rate is fixed, I still think that range is better. But yeah, aside from the gear, I of course also have some weapons, and the only weapons that I use with this build are the 2 lightweight M4 assault rifles. They both have competent and talented as their first 2 talents, and I think they both speak for themselves on healer builds. And then my primary assault rifle has determined in the free slot, which is the weapon I mainly use to shoot players or skill objects and then get reduced cooldowns on my signature skill, allowing me to use that much more freely. And then the second M4 has responsive in the free slot, and I basically use this weapon when somebody's pushing me or when we have an enemy in the middle and he just has to die real quick. I'll swap to the second weapon and I'll try to put as much burst into him as possible. I know that I'm only the healer, so it's not gonna hit that hard, but hey, maybe the 10% damage is the difference. You never know, right? So you might as well run with it. The weapons are modded with headshot damage mods because as a healer, my critical hit chance is pretty damn low, so I don't see much point into speccing critical hit damage on the mods, apart from maybe on the grip where headshot damage is not an option. And then both M4s have your standard extended magazine size with rate of fire, critical hit chance, and that kind of stuff. Skills are, of course, the support station life support mod, and then also the first aid overdose. Now, a lot of you might be wondering why I'm not using the defibrillator instead of the overdose, because the defibrillator has a lot more ally heal on it. But trust me, I've got some good reasons for this. First up, Vigorous is pretty much dead because the 6-piece bonuses are so strong, so the only way to overheal my teammates and myself, for that matter, because I am pretty squishy, is through the overdose. Of course, we also have the green link and the support station master mod, but those don't really get used as often as the first aid, for example. Overdose is also the only way to always proc triage, even if you heal somebody that is already at max health or at max overheal. It's a little mechanic that has to do with refreshing the overheal timer, but it basically guarantees me that I'll always have the triage proc, that I always get 15% reduced cooldowns on the skills. And as I said, I'm also pretty squishy myself, you know. A lot of players tend to go for the healer first when the fight starts. So having Overdose for yourself instead of the defibrillator, it helps you out stay alive in the fight for a lot longer as well. If you can just pop it and go from 0 health to 150% health. That is something that's really, really powerful to have on a healer as well. We usually also have a secondary healer in the squad, the sort of backup healer, which is the final measure healer. And this guy is also already running with a strong defibrillator first aid with ally heal mods on his gear. And because different defibrillator heals also override each other, my weaker defibrillator could get in the way of the stronger defibrillator that my teammate has. So yeah, that's yet another reason to run Overdose instead of defibrillator, and I can just keep going on with more and more reasons, but I think you get the general idea of it. So yeah, moving on. My talents are Triage, Critical Save, Combat Medic, and Strike Back. Pretty much the standard healing kit that you'll see on pretty much every healer build. Combat Medic, of course, is a must-have for group play PvP, as well as Triage for the healer, so those speak pretty much for themselves. And now, we've arrived at the part of the video where I would go over all the ins and outs of the support station and how to use it effectively in PvP, but as some of you may have already noticed, I actually posted a video dedicated to that a few days ago on the channel. It goes over how to use the support station versus Predator's Mark users, or how to use the support station when there's multiple support stations at play, as well as some very, very basic stats about the support station that you probably all already know about, but things that I just wanted to include for everybody that's maybe new to the game. A few months ago, I also did a complete video on the Triage talent, which is, as I just said, a very key talent to have for healers in PvP. And using Triage the right way can also make a very, very big difference. I'm sorry to have to link you to so many other videos. I know how it looks. Give me more clicks, give me more views, watch this, watch that. But honestly, guys, there was just no way to put all of the information of all of those videos into this one video without making it a complete drag. So for those that want to learn more stuff about either the support station or Triage, there will be 2 links in the description box down below. You can just go there and watch them. And for those that might have already watched those videos or simply don't give a shit, well, that's going to be all for today. The final measure healer is coming up next, and if you have any questions left, then you know where to find me. As always, I will see you all later, or like they say in the Netherlands, zie je later.